Welcome to this 5-minute horse lessons production. In these segments, we're going to talk about transitions. Transitions from the halt to the walk, from the walk to the trot, from trot to lope or canter, and then downward transitions as well. So lope to canter, to your trot, from trot to walk, and from walk to halt again. In many of the examples, I'll be riding my virtual horse here, so I don't have to miscue my living, breathing horse. It's important to learn proper transitions so that you reduce miscommunication with your horse. Oftentimes, riders are using two legs together for everything. They use two legs to transition their horse. They use two legs to speed their horse up. They use two legs to discipline their horse. They use two legs because they're mad at their horse. They use two legs because their horse is mad at them. And all of that reduces the communication that you have with your horse. So with proper leg movement during your transitions, you'll have nice, smooth, balanced transitions. During the filming of these segments, you'll see that I do not wear spurs. And many of these transition cues are practically imperceptible. You just can't see them. These segments will feature several different horses and riders. We'll be using Nino, who is the white Andalusian, that Susan will mostly be riding. We'll also use Katie in a Western saddle and in a dressage saddle. I'll be riding Katie, as will Susan. For your halt to walk, there are 3 steps. The first is you'll squeeze your legs together for 1 second. After another second, you'll cluck. And then the third second, you'll go ahead and tap your horse on the top of its rump. So it will look like this. Squeeze your legs, tap. When you're going to tap your horse, make sure that you tap them on the top of their rump rather than down by their flank. So you bring this up and over like so, rather than kind of whip it around like so. You want to make sure that you hit them on top of the rump rather than their flank, because if you hit them in their flank, they may startle and then jump ahead or worse. What I'm going to do with Katie as she's standing still is I'm going to take 2 legs and I'm going to squeeze together. And now I'm going to cluck, and now I'm going to tap. Good girl. Going from the halt to the walk, I'm going to squeeze my legs, cluck. Good girl. And that time I didn't need to pop her with my string. Halt to walk, I'm going to squeeze my legs. Good girl. And that time she moved off for me. When you want your horse to walk faster, you're not going to use 2 legs anymore. You're going to alternate your legs. So once my horse has walked, because I've squeezed and released, I will immediately switch to alternating legs. Left leg, left leg. And if I need to, I will go left leg, left leg, tap, if my horse does not listen to my legs. From my halt to my walk, squeeze, tap. Once my horse has started walking and I want it to speed up, I'll go left leg, left leg. If they don't respond to that, left leg, left leg, tap. Your walk to trot transition will be rhythmic. So what I will do is I'm going to squeeze my legs twice, and then I will cluck as I'm squeezing, and then again I will tap. If I know that my horse is having trouble with the trot transition, I'm going to get my spank strap ready before I even start to squeeze. So this is what it's going to look like when I'm not on a horse, so that I'm not disrupting a horse when they're doing the right thing. So I will go squeeze, release, squeeze, release. And now this time I'm going to use 2 legs together again, rhythmically, and I'm going to ask her to change gait upwards. So I'm going to say, ready, and squeeze, squeeze, and there's my trot.
All transitions should become imperceptible. You cannot see Susan squeezing in these transitions. Also, no clucking or tapping. The timing of squeezing is important as well. Here, the red sock represents when Susan is squeezing to get the proper balanced trot. As the red sock hits the ground, squeeze, squeeze, and trot. As the hind red sock hits the ground, squeeze, squeeze, trot. Squeeze, squeeze, trot.
During your walk to trot transition, you'll also need to decide what you're going to do as far as your seat. Are you going to post? Will you use the sitting trot? Or will you two-point? We'll show the different examples here, but look to our trotting segments for more information about how to properly post, sit your trot, and two-point or cowboy post. Squeeze, release, squeeze, release. For the most effective use of your crop, you'll want to use your crop rhythmically rather than randomly. And by that I mean, as you're squeezing and releasing with your legs, your crop should land on your horse the same time that your legs are squeezing. For your horse, the threat of being hit is far worse than the act of being hit. Now, I realize that some people can take that to an extreme, but oftentimes your horse, if you're consistent, if you're squeezing, clucking, and then tapping, your horse will try to avoid being tapped, but they must know that it's going to come. So don't just whack, whack, whack your horse. Use your crop effectively, which means rhythmically. Western riders often will have a spank strap or somewhat of the end of a lead rope that they'll use. If you're using this to spank your horse, do be careful. You want it to be an extension of your arm so that as it goes out, it's going back and tapping on the top. Sometimes people kind of flick these things around like that, and that again will flip your horse out rather than urge your horse forward. So as you're using this, take it out and bang. It's almost as though I'm pointing with the end of my finger, and it's going to go back and tap my horse on the top of its rump. When I'm first training a horse to do their trot transitions, it's much easier to use a crop because it doesn't have a life of its own. When I'm using my spank strap and I go back like this, there's all this time that takes place before I get it there, and I want this slap to happen as I'm squeezing my leg. So as I'm squeezing my leg, I want my horse to feel hit, 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 except they're going to feel it on their rump. So as I'm squeezing my leg, I'm going hit, hit, hit. So I'm not ever just randomly hitting my horse. You want to rhythmically tap your horse. So when I'm using a crop like so, if I have my reins, my hand will be more or less set up like so. And again, I will squeeze twice, then I will cluck twice while I'm squeezing, and then I will tap as I'm squeezing. Here I go. I'm going to go squeeze, release, until my horse trots, and then you stop your squeeze and release. A crop. A crop. It's much nicer. I do not hit my horse with a whip. I do not whip my horse. I tap them with a crop. All right. When you wish to speed your horse up in all of their gaits, whether it be the walk, the trot, or the lope canter, you will alternate your legs. And you will always alternate using the inside leg first, and then the outside leg, and then the inside leg again if needed. If you need to do more than that, you'll continue alternating your legs and tapping at the same time rhythmically with your crop or with your hand. So it will look like this. Left leg, left leg, tap, tap, tap. As soon as your horse has moved faster, even if you've only used one leg, then you don't need to continue alternating your legs. So if I kick one leg and my horse speeds up, I would not kick again with the second leg. If your horse needs a kick to the inside and then the outside and then speeds up, do not kick to the inside again. For example, one kick, two kick, then I'm finished as long as my horse reacts. If it needs three, feel free to use three. Inside, outside, inside. And if you need to go to the fourth level, continue to do so. Inside, inside, tap, tap, tap. Pretty soon your horse will realize after the first or second kick that they should speed up whichever gait they are in. from the halt to the walk, and then I'll ask Katie to speed up her walk. So as I transition from my halt to the walk, 2 legs to change gait, and then to speed her up, alternating legs, starting with my inside leg, in this case my left leg. So I'm going to ask for my walk. I'm going to squeeze 2 legs together. Squeeze. Good girl. She moved right off for me. And now I'm going to say left leg, left leg, and she sped up just enough so that she understood. And I'm going to ask her again to speed up. So I'm going to wait for my step. Left leg, left leg. And that time, I'm just going to give her a little tap, and she kind of jolted forward a little bit. And I'm going to ask her to speed up again. And I'm ready with my little slap strap here, because I don't think that she's particularly speeding up very quickly. So I'm going to go again. Ready, and left leg, left leg, slap. There's my speed up. Try to get her back on my circle. I'm going to ask her to speed up again. And left leg, left leg, slap. And I'm not slapping her very hard, you can see. But it's enough to say, I want you to speed up your gait, but not change gait. I'm just going to push her out to the outside of the circle here. And now this time I'm going to use 2 legs together again, rhythmically. And I'm going to ask her to change gait upwards. So I'm going to say, ready, and squeeze, squeeze, tap. And there's my trot. If I want her to speed up the trot, I'm going to alternate legs again. So I'm going to go left leg, left leg. And now to slow down, slow down, slow down. Good girl. And now to a halt, slow down, halt. Your trot to lope or canter transition will look like this. First, you're going to bring your inside leg slightly forward of the cinch, your outside leg slightly back. I'm going to lift my inside rein to reinforce my inside bend, and then I will use my legs together to begin with, rhythmically. So I'll be squeezing, then I will smooch if my horse has not gone in 2 squeezes. I will smooch and then begin my tapping, all very rhythmically. So it'll look like this. My legs, my rein, I'm going to squeeze, squeeze.
As Susan is getting ready, her legs will separate, the raising of the inside rein, the squeezing, and the lope, in this case the canter. Your lope canter transitions should also be imperceptible. You just cannot see the squeezing in these transitions, and there is no smooching or tapping with the whip either. The timing of the squeezing is important at your lope canter departure as well. Here the blue sock is representing when Susan is squeezing to get the proper balanced lope or canter. As the blue sock hits the ground, squeeze, squeeze, canter. Squeeze, squeeze, canter.
Your speed control at the lope or canter is often difficult to do if you're trying to alternate your legs. It can be done. Normally, though, you're going to try to use your inside leg a little bit more aggressively. So if I'm on my left lead, I'm going to use my inside leg and say bump, 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 bump. If you can alternate, if your seat is good enough so that you can use your inside, outside, inside, that also can be very effective, but don't put yourself out of balance in order to get your speed control. All very rhythmically, so it'll look like this. My legs, my rein, I'm going to squeeze, squeeze.
Many riders are not clear about the difference between the lope and the canter. So let's go ahead and start with the lope. The lope is a 3-beat gait which begins with a strike step on the outside hind. Next, there's a balancing diagonal step, a completion step, which also gives the lead, and then finally a moment of suspension, and then it all happens again. So there is a strike step, a balancing diagonal, and a completion step, moment of suspension, and it all happens again. Next, take a look at the canter. The canter is a 3-beat gait, which begins with a strike step, and then a balancing diagonal step, a completion step, which also gives the lead, in this case the left lead, a moment of suspension, and then it all happens again. The strike step on the outside hind, a balancing diagonal step, a completion step, and then finally a moment of suspension. Now take a look at these gaits with one over the other. On the top, you've got your lope, strike step, diagonal, completion. On the bottom, you have the canter, strike step, diagonal, completion. If we freeze frame these, you can see the exact difference between the lope and the canter, and that is the saddle in which you ride. This means if you ride one of these, then this is a lope. And if you ride one of these, then this is a canter. And that is the difference between the lope and the canter.
As I ask for my canter or my lope, what I want to do is, first, I want to separate my legs so that my inside leg is going to go slightly forward of the girth or the cinch. My right leg will go just ever so slightly to the back, or my outside leg. And then I'm going to lift my inside rein like so. And it's the opposite of twist. I don't want you to come up like so. That's going to disengage your horse's hindquarter, which will instantly give you the incorrect lead, or it will give you a crossfire or a disunited canter. So the proper way to ask for that lope or canter departure is to twist your hand up like this, just a little bit. And as you and your horse get better at it, this will be just the smallest little upward movement with your hand. But at first, it should be more bringing it out to the side and lifting it ever so slightly with your legs separated like so. To clarify your lope transition, and this is in particular to Western riders who are convinced that when they're asking for their lope, they should pull their horse to the outside in order to get the left lead, and that is incorrect. The secret to successful horse management is to make sure you're managing your horse's bend. Your horse should always be bent in the direction of travel. So when I want the left lead, my horse should be bent slightly to the left. I'm lifting my inside rein and then offsetting my legs and giving my squeeze. Do not try to yank your horse's head to the outside, kick over here, and then kick, 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 because you must then bring your horse all the way back around, change the angle of the spine in order to get your horse to lope or canter in balance. So I apologize to the Western folks out there that know that this way is the way you ask for your lope departure, but it is absolutely incorrect. Stop doing it immediately, please. Good luck with that. You'll also need to remember that for your trot to canter or trot to lope, that you'll be smooching rather than clucking. At the trot, you would cluck. For your canter lope transition, you're going to smooch. And remember, you'll be doing that rhythmically with your legs. Squeezing, squeezing, finally with the crop if you need it. When you're asking for your downward transitions, again, it's very important that you keep your hands in your power position. So at this point, you should have already learned from our previous segments on adjusting your reins and the 5 ways to steer your horse, how to make your bite adjustment, how to make your hand adjustments, and how to finger adjust. It's important that your hands stay in front of you in this power position, in this little box, in front of your saddle horn or in front of your horse's withers. That way, as you're asking for your transitions, you don't bury your hands behind you like so. If your reins are so long that you're fighting your own body or you're punching yourself in your own gut, then your reins are not adjusted properly. Keep your hands forward, and then it is a light pull, release, pull, release, pull, release. And that same action, that pulling and releasing, is the same for every transition. It's the same for your backup. It's the same for your walk to halt, slow down, release, slow down, release, slow down, release into the halt. It's the same for your trot to the walk, slow down your trot, slow down, and continue walking. It's the same for your canter or lope to your trot. Again, you're going to say slow down, until finally your horse breaks gait, and then you would ask them to stay in the same gait. All of your downward transitions, you will start using your reins first. And again, it's going to be a slow down, slow down, slow down. It's very important that you find your pressure point. So let's say that I find 1% pressure on Katie, and I'm going to increase that pressure until I get a slow down or a back up if I'm standing still. So I will go 1% to 5%, back to 1% to 10% if I'm not getting enough, back to 1% to 20%, back to 1%, but I never jerk on and off of my horse's mouth. So I don't ever want to see slack in the reins. There will always be a slightly tight rein. Increase the pressure, decrease the pressure to 1%. 1%, 5%, 1%, 10%, 1%, 20%, 1%, 75%. And that is the proper way to cue with your reins. Eventually, you'll be able to use your seat to slow down your horse, or even just relax and have a big exhale. But it's important that your horse learns to work off of the reins first. Another thing to remember on your downward transitions is you may need to ask your horse to slow down, change gait, but then immediately change your legs in order to say, I want you to continue on in that same gait. In that case, this is what it will look like. You'll say, slow down, slow down, slow down, speed up, speed up, speed up. So if your horse wants to break two gaits, if they want to go from canter to walk or from trot to halt, again, you must be very clear to your horse that a little bit of alternating leg is what's going to keep your horse moving rather than breaking gait twice. Your walk to halt transitions will be very rhythmic in nature with your reins. And as I'm going to come to a halt, again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find my contact and gently pull back and go slow down, and she's going to drift to her stop, and then I will release my pressure there. Ideally, you would like to do your walk to halt transitions in time with your horse's front outside foot. So it will look like this. Slow down, slow down, slow down, finally halt. Slow down, slow down, slow down, finally halt.
A slight rollback onto your pockets gives a little leverage before you cue with your hands. Your hand cues will look like this. Squeeze, release, squeeze, release, squeeze, release. Put it all together and this is what happens. At the walk, roll your hips, begin your hand cues. Slow down, slow down, slow down, and finally halt. That's it. Next up, trot to walk. Trot to walk. As we said earlier, all of your downward transitions are a function of your reins squeezing and releasing rhythmically. Specifically, as Katie's outside front, here in red, hits the ground, that is when Susan will cue for the slow down and finally transition to the walk. Slow down, slow down, slow down, transition to the walk. Slow down, slow down, slow down, transition to the walk. At real speed, it's like this. Now, 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 walk.
When my horse is trotting and I want to slow down to the walk, slow down, transition, but keep walking. Keep walking.
Here again at the trot to walk transition, roll the hips slightly back. Your finger squeezes will be much quicker than at the walk, and if you need to, alternate your legs to let your horse know they should continue walking. Up next, the Lope Canter transition to the trot. Lope Canter to trot transitions. Just like the walk to halt and the trot to walk, it's all about the rhythmic nature of your reins. At this transition, you'll roll your hips, squeeze your hands for the slow down cue. After the transition, you'll alternate your legs if needed to make sure that your horse stays in the trot. The timing for this transition is when the outside hind leg hits the ground. That's shown here in blue. As it hits, that's the time to squeeze your hands, which say to your horse, slow down, slow down, slow down, transition, and then alternate your legs if necessary. At the lope, your hands will squeeze very quickly, much more quickly than the walk or the trot.
You'll say slow down, slow down, slow down, speed up, speed up, speed up. So if your horse wants to break two gaits, if they want to go from canter to walk or from trot to halt, again, you must be very clear to your horse that a little bit of alternating leg is what's going to keep your horse moving rather than breaking gait twice.
Many riders have the problem that their horse will not stop. It's important to take the downward transitions one at a time. Start with a backup. Work to the walk halt, then to the trot walk, and finally take on the canter lope to trot transition. It's a process, and here's my rule. Young horses get 5 rhythmic chances to come to a transition, and if they don't, I turn them into a tight circle until they transition downward. Then we try it again. 5 times asking with my reins, a small circle if they don't. After just a few minutes of this type of exercise, your horse should begin to understand what you're asking. It is a process of clear yet quiet communication. Take it slow and it will work.
So on my virtual horse, I'm going to go through the upward transitions and the downward transitions, and then also asking your horse to speed up a little bit. So from my halt to my walk, squeeze, tap. Once my horse has started walking and I want it to speed up, I'll go left leg, left leg. If they don't respond to that, left leg, left leg, tap. And I will continue to tap as long as it takes until my horse speeds up just a little bit. My horse should not speed up from the walk to the trot again until my horse feels 2 legs on their side rhythmically. Squeeze, release, squeeze, release. Once my horse is trotted and I want my horse to speed up, alternating legs again. Left leg, left leg. When I want my canter transition, my legs slightly separate. I lift my inside rein. I'm going to go ahead and squeeze, release. When I want my horse to speed up at the lope or the canter, mostly I'll try to use my inside leg. Speed up, speed up, speed up. However, you can alternate as well. Speed up, speed up. Try to alternate if you can. To slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down, but stay in the trot. When my horse is trotting and I want to slow down to the walk, slow down, transition, but keep walking. When I want to halt, slow down, slow down, slow down, and release into the halt. When I'm ready for my horse to back up, pull back, release for each step. Good horsey. The biggest difference between the transition from halt to walk and walk to trot is that for your halt to walk, you will squeeze your legs together until your horse moves and then release. Your trot transition, on the other hand, will use rhythmic squeezing with your legs. So it will be a squeeze, release, squeeze, release, squeeze, release. This is important for several reasons. The first being you want to time your transition or your squeeze with your horse's feet. Also, when you are riding, you don't want your horse to ever think that just because you squeeze your legs one time, if you lose your balance or if your horse jumps at something, that they should immediately change gait. They should be waiting for rhythmic squeezing. This is particularly important when you're on the trail, and if your horse would, for some reason, step sideways and you squeeze for all of your might to hold on to your horse, if your horse has learned that that squeeze means go faster, you're inviting your horse for a gallop or a takeoff. So what your horse should feel or think when you squeeze with all of your might is that you're asking your horse to walk and to calm down, rather than if you're squeezing and releasing, you're not going to squeeze and release like that rhythmically when you are in a panic situation. Another reason that you want to rhythmically squeeze your legs is because you can control where your horse takes its transition, whether upwards or downwards. During the filming, we'll often use E, the cone E, as reference. So when your horse's shoulder reaches that cone, that's where you're looking for your transition. So if your horse comes out and is quite lazy on one day, or you're warming up, you might take 3 squeezes before your horse transitions. If your horse is quite hot as they start to warm up, you'll know that there'll be a 1 squeeze or a 2 squeeze horse. If your horse is really hot, you'll just squeeze 1 time and they'll change gait immediately. And then you would like to sort of warm your horse down a little bit. Ideally, it will always be on the 2nd squeeze, and you will never have to use a vocal command, the cluck or the smooch. And ideally, you'll never have to use a riding crop or a slap on the rump, that your horse will always learn to just move off the squeezes of the leg. It is also very dangerous just to kick your horse, whether you are angry with your horse or whether trying to discipline your horse. It's dangerous to simply kick a horse, especially when they're not expecting it. So you don't want to cause any sort of bucking or running off when you are just randomly kicking your horse.
The secret to successful transitions is clear and concise communication within each gait. In these segments, we took on upward transitions, halt to walk, walk to trot, trot to canter, or the lope, and downward transitions, canter lope to the trot, trot to walk, walk to halt. Also covered were the topics of speed control, how to speed your horse up, and how to slow your horse down. I'd like to thank our superstar horses, Katie for being a real champ, and also Nino, the gray Andalusian, who is just learning and does all sorts of fancy stuff as he gets excited or slightly confused, which is so much more fun than a horse that bucks or balks when they get excited or confused. Thanks to Susan for being a reluctant on-camera champ. Thanks to Casey for her camera and audio work.